The first hint that our peaceful weekend at Whispering Lake was about to turn into a circus came before I even had my first sip of coffee. My wife was still brushing her teeth, hair in a messy top bun, when her phone buzzed with an incoming dispatch. She tapped speaker with a wet toothbrush still hanging from her mouth. A stiff, official voice filled the kitchen. "Ma'am, we've received a 911 report of a female, name given as Rebecca Moore, unlawfully occupying a residence in Whispering Pines Estates. The caller is requesting immediate removal." Rebecca froze mid-brush, turned toward me, and blinked like she just heard the weather report predict a meteor strike. Toothpaste foam dripped onto her shirt. "Honey," she mumbled. "Apparently I'm squatting in our own house." She spit, rinsed, grabbed a towel, and stared at me like the world had tilted 10 degrees to the left. And that's when I knew who had to be behind it. Only one person in the entire subdivision was unhinged enough to weaponize emergency services for sport. Madeline Keene, HOA president. Self-declared guardian of property values. A woman who treated the community rulebook like scripture and herself like the chosen prophet. And she clearly had no idea she had just tried to evict the woman who oversaw the entire State Patrol Bureau. Before I get ahead of myself, go ahead and drop where you're watching from and what time it is there. And hey, if HOA drama mixed with justice served hot is your thing, hit that subscribe button. Because today, you're in for a ride. If you've never watched your calm, disciplined, highly decorated spouse get falsely reported to 911 before breakfast, let me tell you, it does something weird to your brain. 1 minute you're measuring coffee grounds. The next you're looking at the love of your life as she mutters, "She really called the cops on me." But to understand why none of this was actually surprising, you need to know what went down 3 days earlier. Because Whispering Pines didn't suddenly transform into a battleground. The fuse had already been lit. Madeline just decided to toss it into a bucket of gasoline. We'd bought our lakeside cabin at the start of summer, right after Rebecca's promotion. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say she needed a break more than anyone I know. When you run a statewide law enforcement agency, you carry more stress than a pressure cooker missing its safety valve. She didn't complain. That wasn't her style, but I saw it in the nights she paced the hallway instead of sleeping. In the mornings she stared at her uniform as if it were a 100-pound vest. So when the paperwork cleared, we loaded the truck with groceries, fishing gear, and enough hope for peace to fill the whole lake. Whispering Pines was supposed to be our sanctuary. Tall trees. Clean water. A dock big enough for 2 people who desperately needed quiet. We pulled up humming along to old acoustic songs, ready to reset. We didn't even get all the groceries out of the truck before Trouble walked in wearing perfume strong enough to knock out small wildlife. Rebecca was halfway to the door carrying bags when tires crunched over gravel. A white BMW SUV rolled into our driveway like it owned the deed. The driver door swung open and out stepped a woman whose sunglasses probably cost more than our kayak. She wore a cashmere cardigan, perfectly curled hair, and an expression that suggested she hadn't smiled since the Bush administration. Madeline. She clutched a clipboard like a knight grips a sword, eager for battle, hungry for control. No wave. No. Hello? Not even a fake HOA-friendly smile. She just started circling our cabin, scribbling notes with the energy of someone who'd been waiting all week to judge something. Rebecca attempted politeness. "Hi there, can we help you with something?" Madeline didn't even glance up. "We've had reports of unauthorized activity on this parcel. I need to confirm your status. Are you renters?" Rebecca set down the grocery bags, wiped her hands on her jeans, and answered with her usual patient tone. "No. We own this property." Madeline finally looked up, her nose wrinkling like she just smelled deceit. "I don't recognize you." I stepped beside Rebecca. "We were here last spring to sign papers. I'm Adam, this is my wife, Rebecca." Madeline lifted her chin. "I'm the HOA president," she declared, in the same tone a medieval queen might announce a death sentence. "We require formal occupancy notices submitted through the community portal. Did you file one? Let me tell you something about that portal. It was a glitchy relic straight from early 2000s internet hell. The login page crashed if you blinked too fast. Dates in the calendar still showed events from 2017. Half the tabs said things like, Draft V4 Final. This was the system Madeline spoke of as if she were guarding NASA's command center. Rebecca offered a polite smile. We weren't informed that owners had to submit that. Madeline clicked her pen like she wanted to stab the air with it. Regardless, I don't see your name in the ownership record. And in that moment, everything clicked. I'd purchased the cabin under my business LLC, paperwork convenience, nothing secretive, but it meant only my name appeared on the title. Not because Rebecca wasn't my partner in everything, but because tax accountants think in spreadsheets, not romance. Madeline didn't know that. She just saw a woman whose name didn't match her beloved portal's database. And she assumed the absolute worst. What we didn't know, what we couldn't know, was that this tiny moment, a name missing from a glitchy website, would be the spark that burned the whole community weekend to ash. And 3 days later, that spark would become a full-blown 911 call accusing my wife of breaking into her own home. And that was only the beginning. I wish I could say the 911 call was the worst of it. But honestly, it was just the loudest symptom of a problem that had been quietly rotting beneath the pine trees for years. And it all started unraveling the very next morning after our arrival. Rebecca and I were out on the dock, coffee mugs in hand, watching the fog lift off the lake like a curtain. The kind of morning that was supposed to calm your nerves, slow your heartbeat, remind you the world wasn't always on fire. I should have known peace was a trap. A shadow moved past the trees. Madeline marched down the embankment with that same cursed clipboard tucked under her arm. Morning, I called out because I was raised polite. She didn't respond. Instead, she positioned herself at the edge of our dock like a surveyor at a crime scene and snapped photos of the chairs, the boards, the railings, even the way our paddleboat rope was tied. Rebecca gently placed her mug down. I'm going to ask this nicely, she said. Is there a reason you're photographing our property? Madeline didn't flinch. Dock elevation appears non-compliant. Our dock, which had been there since 1998. Built long before Whispering Pines even had bylaws. Rebecca exhaled slowly, the way she does when she's counting to 10 in her head. Ma'am, with all due respect. HOA president, Madeline corrected sharply. As president, my duties include reporting all violations. And according to community engineering guidelines. Community engineering guidelines? I repeated. This place doesn't even have sidewalks. But she was already walking away, snapping more photos, muttering about improper rope storage. That was the moment Rebecca realized we weren't just dealing with a nosy neighbor. We were dealing with a woman who believed she was the sheriff, judge, jury, and zoning board all rolled into one. Later that afternoon, we tried logging into the infamous community portal she worshipped like scripture. After 5 attempts and 1 unexpected fatal error screen, we finally got in. The homepage looked like someone threw outdated HTML at a wall and hoped it stuck. But right there, pinned to the top, was a brand new notice. Unauthorized occupants reported on Lot 43. Pending review? Our lot. Rebecca stared at the screen. She posted this publicly? Without speaking to us? I clicked the next link. Another notice. Potential dock safety hazard, investigation initiated. And then another. Unapproved vehicle on premises. That unapproved vehicle was our truck. The same truck we'd parked there last spring without issue. Rebecca rubbed her temples. She's building a case. A fake one. For what? Harassment? I didn't answer. Because I was scrolling. And then I found it. A thread. Dozens of residents commenting. Speculating. Judging. New people come in and think rules don't apply. If they didn't register, something's suspicious. Madeline doesn't make mistakes. If she says they're not owners, they're probably not. Rebecca leaned over my shoulder, reading every word. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes hardened. Not angry. Not hurt. Just done. Which brings us back to the morning of the 911 call. Rebecca hung up with dispatch, pinched the bridge of her nose, and whispered, "This isn't a misunderstanding anymore." We hadn't even processed what to do when tires screeched outside. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Lights off. Engine humming. Deputy Harris stepped out, a man Rebecca had trained during her early years in the force. He froze halfway up the steps when he saw her. Oh hell. Rebecca? You're the unlawful occupant? Rebecca lifted one eyebrow. That's what I'm told. He let out a long, exhausted sigh. Madeline called in a trespassing report. Said you were refusing to leave the residence. I gestured inside. You want to see our deed? It's on the counter. He shook his head. No need. I already know this is nonsense. But I still have to document that I came out here. Rebecca crossed her arms. You know she's escalating, right? This wasn't a welfare check. She reported me as a criminal. Harris hesitated. Then he leaned in and lowered his voice. You didn't hear it from me, but she's called us 4 times this week about something or someone. Last night she reported a suspicious bird feeder on Lot 12. Before that she claimed another neighbor was planning a hostile takeover of the HOA. The dispatcher put her number on internal watch for misuse. Rebecca stared at him, then nodded once. Thank you. As he walked back to the cruiser, he muttered, This is gonna blow up. He had no idea how right he was. When the cruiser disappeared down the road, Rebecca stepped inside, grabbed her jacket, clipped her badge to her belt, not to flash authority, but because she was done letting this woman weaponize lies, and headed straight out the door. Where are you going? I called. To end this. Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Controlled. The kind of calm that makes grown men rethink their life choices. I followed her down the driveway to the HOA office, a remodeled storage shed with a sign that said, Community Operations Center. As if it were the Pentagon. Madeline was inside, typing furiously on her laptop as if she were cracking a national security threat. She didn't even look up. If you're here to dispute the violations. Rebecca placed her badge on the desk. Firm. Not loud. Madeline's fingers froze. Mrs. Keene. Rebecca said evenly. You filed a false 911 report on a homeowner. You publicly accused me of unlawful occupancy. You initiated a harassment campaign using HOA infrastructure. Madeline swallowed hard. I acted within protocol. No, Rebecca corrected softly. You acted beyond your authority. And you broke the law. The color drained from Madeline's face. Rebecca continued. You will remove every baseless notice. You will issue a correction stating that we are the rightful owners. And you will stop accessing residents' private information for personal vendettas. Madeline's voice cracked. You can't tell me how to run this community. Rebecca leaned forward just slightly. I can tell you how the law works. And I can tell you what happens to people who misuse emergency services. The room was silent except for the hum of the cheap LED lights overhead. Madeline finally whispered. I didn't know who you were. Rebecca shook her head. That's the problem. You treat everyone like they owe you power. Nobody here does. And with that, she turned and walked out. I followed, stunned, proud, and bracing for whatever storm would come next. Because people like Madeline don't go down quietly. They double down. And somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close.